Hey guys, how you doing? It's Quennel Gaskin here with you today. I'm so excited that you are joining me today. I just wanted to come and share a couple of different things with you today. Um, One of the statements that I use a lot, well, you're going to hear me using even more because it's just a true statement. Years ago, I heard this from a mentor of mine who says, small hinges swing big doors. Small hinges swing big doors. And it's amazing to see how, it doesn't start with the big things. It starts with the small things. And so today I want to be able to talk with you about scales. So I'm going to be building on this. Small hinges swing big doors. Dealing with scales, that's in reference to music, scales, chords, exercises that has helped me through. So I'm going to be sharing with you today, and I'm really looking forward to it. I love you guys so much, and looking to help you. Like the video, share this with a friend, tell people I'm on, and sharing some informative things that I believe that will be a blessing to you today. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and you can post them, and I'll do my best to answer them in this session and even after to try to help you in any way I can, okay? Thank you guys for joining me today. Scales. And I know today I have a friend of mine that's going to be joining us, just going to be asking some questions. So we're going to be talking, and I'm going to be answering some questions pertaining to the small hinges swing big doors. In reference to music, we're talking about scales. Once again, like the video, share this video. It's going to be able to help you. I really want you to be the best that you can be. All right, here we go. Going to kick it off.
All right, Quennel. So, since we're talking about scales today, let's start with, when did you start playing scales, and when did you learn to play them the right way?
Okay, when did I start playing scales? I started playing scales probably when I was like 15. Probably around that age I started learning what scales were, in the sense of I was creating my own fingering to try to get through it. But when it came to actually learning my scales the right way, was literally it was a few months before going to college. I bought a book from a store in New York called the Sam Ash. It was a music store. Went into the book section, and I picked up this book on scales. They had major scales, chromatic scale, and I picked it up, and here we go. That was the beginning of it.
Cool. So, for you that are watching, we will answer some of your questions. Frank, we see you have a question. So we'll actually go with your question first, and then we'll do some follow-up questions. But Frank's question is, how do I scale as fast as you? How do you get your scales to be as quick as yours?
Practice makes better. It brings almost a sense of perfection. But I mean, even with my scales, I'm still getting faster and still improving. So I think it's something that you work on. Listen to yourself. Make sure you're listening back to see your progress. Definitely metronome is one of the greatest tools that you can use. And just make sure that you have the right fingering. You need the right technique. You need to make sure that your fingers are in the right position, right place. And being able to do that repetitiously over and over and over and over and over and over again. And the more you do it, the better you get with it. Whether it be your right hand or your left hand, I'm still working on it, still trying to improve and get faster, and even make sure that you're clean with your scales so people can understand what you're doing. So practice makes better, metronome, and spend time with it. The more you do it, the better you're going to get every day.
So let's go back to, you mentioned you were playing scales, and then at the college point, before college, you started, you had to start to play the scales right to get into college.
Right.
What was the difference in your playing when you were playing the scales just however versus after knowing how to play them with the correct finger?
I had a certain level of speed and clarity with them the wrong way. But when I started learning it the right way, the more and more I did it, the more cleaner I became. I even became even more clean, and I sounded even more polished with what I had. So it helped me to learn it the right way because of accuracy. It helped with my dexterity even more, and even helped me to build more of my left hand. I was doing things with my left hand, but I mean, it really helped me to have more fluidity with my left hand, so I will be able to do more and for longer. It almost gave me like a, I want to say, how do I say it, a finger cardio. So, I was able to just do it longer and not be hurting in my wrist and things like that. So that's how it affected and helped me.
Okay. And again, if you guys have any questions, make sure you post your questions. We'll kind of go through this. So today's hinge is scales. So we're dealing with how small hinges swing big doors. So without your scales and doing them effectively the right way, you're limiting the door that you can open. So would you do when you play, or at this point, are you thinking what scales you're playing, or how do you come up with the movements that sound like scales in your right hand? So you play some stuff that's fast, sounds like scales, or these actual scales, or they scales you made up? What are your thoughts on the scales that you play?
The scales that I'm playing at this point, I'm not really thinking about it. It's more of a hearing thing. It's what I'm going for. What I'm going for is sound. I'm always thinking on how I can, first of all, be blessed by what I'm playing. It's just a sound that it just sits on you. It makes you feel a certain way. It makes you feel good, like a good vibe. And so I think about how I can bless the people and how it's going to feel and how it's going to rest on them. Will that impact them? Will that touch their heart? Will that move them? And so I play to try to just reach a place of, I don't know what's going to come out. But when I hear it, I know that is like, it just feels right. It just feels right. So my skills that I'm using now, I'm not even like thinking about it. It's just kind of a feeling thing. As you just moving through, you just hear things and reaching and putting things together, whatever feels good. And then, I don't know if you notice, maybe you might do it, or you hear people do it, they stop on something because it's like, what was that? Like, so it's the feeling. It's the feeling. And I think the most important thing that I can say about that is I play to the Lord, So I'm always playing from my heart, I'm always playing to the Lord and worshiping in some kind of way to where he's on my mind. And I guess that audience of one that I have with him that I do in my private time, something I want to say to everybody, even in learning your skills and building small hinges that swing big doors, it's always good to have an audience of one, and what you do in your private time affects what happens to you publicly when people hear you. So,
all right. So we have another question. I can't pronounce the name, so I won't try to. So it's a dual question. Is speed crucial, or is it needed? Like, is speed needed to be able to play? I guess music in general. Hopefully that's your question.
I think it just depends on what genre. If you're playing classical and you're playing Rachmaninoff, or you're playing Beethoven or Mozart or a Bach piece, of course you're going to have to have some type of facilitation. You're going to have some speed. If you're playing other genres, country. Just depends on the speed, the tempo of the song. R&B, it could be gospel music, ragtime, these different things. So I guess you should just build up your speed anyway. So, if you want to challenge yourself or you do play a particular type of genre, you just be able to be prepared and ready for anything because you've built up your facilitation and your speed to where you can play things at fast paces.
All right, so let's kind of transition. So with the scales, myself as well as other people have been in the point or in a place in your playing where you're told to learn the scales, to play the scales, to practice your scales, to have your scales. When you didn't know the scales or when you were learning the scales, did you see the purpose of the scales, or was it a process, or when did it become like, hey, I need these?
I didn't understand why I was doing scales really at first necessarily. I just know it sounded good, and it's something that I was reaching for, and I didn't really understand. When I went to school, I still didn't understand why we was necessarily doing scales. That wasn't my focal point. It was all the other things, sight singing and reading, trying to learn how to read music and different things. But when I got out of school and I began to start, as I was teaching and growing in my teaching, then I began to see what scales did for me. It just gave me the ability to deal with understanding key centers. I began to understand that that's what it was doing. I think sometimes things can happen to you. You don't might know, that you actually got it, but you got to go back and got to see. You have to see what you have received or see what you've learned from it. So key centers, it helped me with melody, and it also helped me with establishing chords. So the scales have helped me so much now to where I can pull from melodies and move into different keys, and just reach for certain things. Now that I'm saying, wow, okay, that's what scales is doing. Instead of driving that melody, that's all major scales, So now I see what I didn't see before, how important they are and how it's benefiting me. Some of the ways that it's benefiting me.
So here's a question for you: when you're listening to music, and you hear lines now or even before, were there moments where you would hear something and you'd be like, oh man, that's that scale, or I recognize that pattern? The scales help in that way to where when you listen, you're like, oh, that run was a major scale, or how did it help develop your ear?
It definitely helped me once I started to pay attention to it. There's different ways that people learn songs, different methods that people use. So when I started to hear the melody and start to say, oh, okay, even for the bass, when I'm listening, I'm saying if they got a song and they... Okay, so all they're doing is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 6. Okay, so they're walking up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 1, 2, 3 again of the scale. Oh yeah, okay, that's what it is. So now those bass notes I was able to pick out, those melody or top notes, say with the horns or with the piano player, it was helping me to formulate and get my chords from there. Because I always teach that chords go from whatever that melody note is, you're normally going to have it to where it's going from right to left, and then you build your chords. And that's also how I teach as well. So it was very, very helpful in picking bass notes and then figuring out what the melody of it was.
So now, actually, let's continue to go back. When you're learning this, you talked about hearing the bass and knowing, hey, this is the number of the bass based on the scale, which a lot of us use that as a number system to be like, okay, I can hear that they are doing that. now when you listen to music, do you listen the same way where you're like, okay, they're moving this way, and then this chord over this sounds like this based on the scale degree?
Yeah, it's still coming in handy now, because it just depends on the particular artist, the particular genre of music. Some music is more easier, and then some music is a little bit more challenging. And so I'm still able to kind of go back and pick out what those bass notes are. And maybe we'll do a video on how I learn a song. Take a song I never learned before.
Yeah.
And I'll just show you some of the things that I go through to kind of hear. And but everything, once again, you don't start with the gusto or start with something large. You start with small things. So I didn't know or have a library enough to be able to build, some of these songs that I was hearing in certain genres, like gospel, certain particular artists, or even jazz, just the chords, the inner voices I was missing because, it took me time to build, to really understand, okay, oh, that's what they're playing. Oh, that's this scale, or that's this arpeggiation based off of this scale. And so it took time to build a library to be able to hear how I hear now. And I'm still working on it, trying to just get ways to be even more proficient, to learn things even quicker. It's a process that never stops.
And guys, again, today we're focusing on how small hinges swing big doors. Today's hinge that we're talking about that will swing big doors of scales. So we have another question from Samuel, awesome name. It says, how does one play out of key and resolve back to the original key without taking out of the service? Samuel, we'll probably move that one to when we do our next hinge, because our next hinge deals with chords.
Yeah.
And we'll probably be able to pull that answer in on that session. Absolutely. But
hold tight, we got you.
Yeah, but definitely knowing the scales and when a note goes outside of that scale will help you to be able to get out and resolve. So it's still connected. You still need the scales to get that. Okay, so a few more last questions as it relates to scales. Now, how does the scale help you with melody? Like, so when you listen to music, let's say you hear a melody, do you kind of hear it based on the scale degrees just like you hear it at the bass?
Yep, you hear it based on the scale degree. So Michael Jackson tone, I can't remember what key that is in, but let's say if Mike sings in E flat, and he says, okay, so if my root is E flat, what is that? And what scale degree is that? What part of the scale is that? What? You are not alone. He's doing the same thing. I know automatically. So and repeating it over and over and over again.
So that's a very valuable piece of information, because I think a lot of us do the same thing where we will learn music based on the number, like especially in church music, musicians often be like, hey, we're on the 1, we're on the 4, we do that. But I don't think a lot of people do the same thing for the melodies, to be able to listen to in the car while you're riding. Yeah, you can be like, oh, we're on 1, 4, 5.
I've done it.
But in the car, a lot of people don't think, hey, well, I still need the scale to hear these degrees for the melody.
It helps.
And be able to build it from there. So, from scales, we know there's a lot of different types of scales. When you went to school, what were some of the scale types that you were taught in school, or were you taught any scale types outside of the major scale?
I had the minor. I knew a little bit about the minor from the book that I got before I went to school. And I knew a little bit of the minor scales and the finger and stuff like that. But when I went to school, no, the emphasis for me was learning how to read. And so I really didn't get, my professors didn't really stress licks and bebop stuff. You know, we had jazz songs, but it was teaching me how to read the chart, you know, from the standpoint of maybe the melody, reading the melody and then understanding what the chord name, how to recognize it and how to move, understanding the 7 chords, these things. But it was never, okay, well, we're going to learn bebop licks. Well, you got 5 bebop licks for this particular one. When I meet you next week, we're going to learn that. And I mean, I don't think it was no shade, no whatever, but man, I didn't want to learn how to read. You know, show me chops, man. Show me some licks. Show me. That's what I wanted to know. Yeah. I got none of that all the time I was in school. So there was no emphasis on licks and chops. You just kind of heard it in passing with other people who were playing. And when you learned it, At least for me, that's my experience, or you know, my take on it.
So Jason has a couple of great questions.
What's up, Jason?
To scales. He says, when you play a scale, do you actually hear every note or certain notes at a given time in the chord or song? So I guess a great breakdown, kind of the question that we asked. So when you are playing a scale, are you looking at the whole picture of the scale? So like when I hear a passage, I can hear the tones, or you like, okay, let's say you're doing a chord. Mm-hmm. Are you hearing the chord as one whole chord? Like, oh, that's a major versus a minor sound? Or are you hearing the notes of it?
It depends. It depends on what the song is. It depends on how difficult or challenging the song may be. And then it also depends on what particular part of the song it is. Because based on what I've gathered or where I am in my learning process of the song, it causes me to do different things. Sometimes I'll hear the whole thing. Yeah. Then sometimes I'll hear bits and pieces. And I have to rewind it to make sure that's what I want to hear. Because there's nothing like thinking you heard something and then figuring out that's not what it is. You know what I mean? And get in a bad situation where you learn a song a particular way and you learned it the wrong way, or you missed something, or you missed the note and it's clashing with the band, or, you know, so you want to make sure that you know, just do whatever's going to work best to make sure that you get it. So start with 3 notes of it, then build to the 5 notes. If it's 10 notes that a lick is going off, 6 notes, start with 2 and get that and figure out what the fingering of that or what that's based on. Is that a major? Is that a minor? Is that a mixed lead-in? Is that a Dorian? There's so many different things now that people are, you know, as I guess the social media is growing, YouTube is growing, these things, people are able to learn about things that back in the day, either you had to have a teacher or you have to be in some type of schooling or whatever to learn. It's becoming a lot more accessible. And so people are, you know, implementing some of this stuff in their material and their songs. So it's good to start and then build your way up to one at a time, one note at a time.
And so I think this is a good follow-up. Hopefully, Jason, you're still here. He had a second question, but before I get to the second question, so let's say you are learning a piece of music that has fast running lines. I know for me, I tend to pick out each note versus the whole passage. When you listen to it, like let's say you're learning transcribing a solo. Are you listening to the full passage because your ears are trained to hear that full passage, or do you have to sit down and go like note for note to?
It just depends. Okay. It depends on how difficult the song is. You know, you get a transcription, like say Art Tatum, or you're trying to transcribe even Michael Brecker or somebody like that, or Coltrane. Oh my goodness. You know, like Giant Steps. You're going to have to take your time and go through that and listen in portions. Take a particular part, you know, take a particular part and listen over and over and over and over again and see what are some of the things that might be familiar that you can grab a hold to that help to make it easier rather than to take the whole song at one time. Break it up in pieces because that helps you to kind of get through it. And then be able to also, you can get things, but then forget things. but you want to get it and try to remember it, commit it to memory to where you will never forget it. So you go over it over and over and over again.
And Lisa Jordan says hi.
Hi, Lisa, bless you.
Okay, so Jason had another question that says, how much does perfect pitch play into hearing the scales or your playing?
Ooh. For those who do have perfect pitch, which I do not, I don't know whether it's because I have been lazy. I'm trying to get out of that and really maybe hone in, because it can be developed. There are actually people who teach how to develop perfect pitch by, I believe it's colors. They use that to kind of help. So for me, I hear relative. So I might hear something and I'll listen again. And then I'll just come across it and press the right note. And then when I hear a song that has whatever going on in it, I'm able to kind of just get through it. So if you got perfect pitch, it definitely does help you to know, okay, that's a G. Okay, that's a pentatonic scale. My pentatonic scale consists of whatever. And I'm able to go through it.
Carlito has a question about chords. So
Carlito,
just to give everybody a follow-up, today we're focusing on small hinges, swing big doors. And we have hinges that we're going to talk about. The first hinge is scales. Later we'll come with our second hinge, which is going to be chords, and then our third hinge, which is going to be exercises that bring the chords and the scales together to make sense of it on how you do quite a few things. And Derry says, what program is that, Quennel? Derry, if you can give us a follow-up to by program, what do you mean? That'll help us. All right, so again, we're talking about scales again. So if we go back even further, for a long time, you mainly played in the key of C. And when you played in the key of C,
yep,
were you learning the scales and stuff of other keys, or were you just kind of content in C? What was
it wasn't
that?
like content. I didn't have the slightest idea how to transpose. Back when I was coming up in 92, 93, there was no YouTube. If you didn't have a teacher or have some type of exposure or was able to be around someone to watch, you was up a creek. You had to either find somebody who to teach you, to show you. So I wasn't content in C, but I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know how to, or I didn't even think about trying to play in other keys at that time. It was just try to do the best with the responsibility I had. I was the minister of music at the church, and I was young, 12, 13 years old. That kind of responsibility on you, you got to try to learn the songs, learn these hymns they singing, learn these choir songs, try to get it. You ain't thinking about trying to play in no other keys, because the church already knew he playing C, so we're going to work with him until he grows. So C was my first key. Then I learned about transposing a little bit from some other people.
About transposing, or you saying you learned about how to go to different keys?
And play go to different keys.
Or transposing.
No transpose button. I never transposed. I thank God for that. I never got into that. And I don't suggest that you do either. If you do, don't do that. It's not good for your growth and your development. But I started in C, and I learned something in C sharp. I learned how to literally kind of take stuff up. I didn't know about that when I first started. And then C sharp, I learned a little bit. Then E flat was next. And then I had an uncle in Paston who came who played well in F sharp. And so he kind of showed me 4 chords in F sharp. So that started my F sharp journey. But I was already 2 years in, 3 years in, and then, I don't know, I guess just got tired of being embarrassed or just feeling limited. I couldn't keep up. Like, people were singing keys, and I was just trying to give them singing my key that I was comfortable with.
That actually brings up a good thought. What are the limitations of not knowing your scale, your 12 scales?
There are definitely limitations in it, because the accuracy. I think we were talking about it before, bro. We said how you're trying to learn a song and it's E flat and you hitting G in an E scale. It's E flat, E scale, major scaling. The song is dealing with all majors, no accidentals, but you playing minor stuff, trying to figure out what the melody, that in the major scale, that C is actually a sharp 5. So why are you even playing that?
Yeah.
When you don't know your scales, you don't know. There's no need for me to play no B flat, because if a person is singing major, unless the person goes, unless a person is doing that kind of stuff, use a B flat. It's all major, so it helps you to be accurate. And okay, I know my scale, so I know they sing it. So I know what to press. Now I know how to build my chords. Now I know how to add flavor and, do some other things to it. I hope that makes sense.
I'm tempted to go to a different question, but so the limitations of not knowing your skills, that limitation was the fact that you can't, you end up playing stuff that's out of the key when it's not meant to be out of the key. So if you're learning a song that's in the key of E and the melody is all within the key or diatonic,
right,
you end up playing other stuff. And I recognize it sometimes, like we'll be sitting in the bandstand and you're showing somebody a part and they're playing all kinds of wrong notes, and it's like, yo, all the notes I'm playing is just in the key.
Absolutely.
So the ears are not trained to hear the difference of in the key versus out of the key. Mm-hmm. So with your ear, you when it came to learning melodies and playing within the key, would you say that knowing the scales helped you to identify the difference between playing in the key and going what we would call out the key?
Oh yeah, definitely. It definitely helped me to begin to start making a distinction between the two. So if I'm playing in D flat and I'm doing something, you sing a song. I will enter this case devotional service. It wasn't praise and worship. It was devotional service back when I came up. So there's no need for me to go. I'm going way out, kind of. I'm just moving to places where I don't need to move. I need to keep it within the confines of what the song is.
So with that being said, would you suggest, for a season at least, focusing on hearing just within the key?
Absolutely. One key and then going through that, doing that in all of your keys is going to be beneficial. So you stick with one key and you try to hear the things that you need to hear from the melody, whatever that particular melody of that song is, whether it be major or minor. But we'll start with the basis and we'll take the major. And then going through every key like that just to make sure that you're on top of it. And you don't find yourself at a handicap position just playing in all your black keys or just playing in all your white keys and can't really play in all your black keys. Or you want to be able to play at all your keys and be able to hear, melodies, where melodies go, and then how to build your chords from there when that time comes.
So what advice would you give someone that has been playing for years, but is still struggling to hear the melody or hear the numbers on the bass? Would the suggestion be to just start making sure that you identify the scales, or how do you improve being able to hear the melodies and what notes and how it relates to the key center and stuff? What would your advice be to that?
You gotta take time to do maybe what you haven't did. The course that I created was State of Course, Volume 1, Conquering the Foundation, which deals with all the stuff that we're talking about. But it's not just for keyboard players. Vocalists can use it as well. Bass players can use it. Guitar players can use it. Horn players, they can use it too. And so whoever you may be, don't get comfortable in maybe your way. That's not the most effective way. Get into it. Take time to learn. Go back and do something. Like I still hear some people tell me on bass and guitar and even keys, oh man, I ain't learned a number system yet. And I'm not shocked or surprised, and I don't look at them crazy, because it happens. I definitely do understand life happens and you get caught up and you work with what you have known. But there's a more excellent way. Take the time to better yourself. Take the time to develop. Take the time to go back. Learn that number system. Learn your scales. Learn where, what goes. What's the difference between major and minor on the three? A major three in F sharp, or minor, in F sharp. Where particular things go, what notes should be played from doing a flat 7, going to a 6. Be able to express that. So when you're working with a keyboard player and you're an organist and he gives you, we're playing a major, the major over the flat 7, walk down. Kind of get an idea what that is. Bass player, where to go. Guitar player, the same thing for you. So definitely take time to increase and to better yourself. Don't ever live life with no regrets. You want to look at say, man, 15 years, 20 years I've been playing, or 10 years, whatever, and I still haven't done that. No, change that today. Make an effort to be better today.
Cool. So again, guys, for you that are just joining, today's focus is small hinges swing big doors. And we're focusing on hinge number 1, which is scales. Later we'll focus on hinge 2, chords, and hinge 3, exercises that bring these two elements together. So if you have any questions, we'll be on for about another 5 minutes. Feel free to post your questions. Let us know if you have any thoughts as it relates to scales and how they help or negatively affect you. So when you're playing, one of my teachers years ago, I was one that tried to totally depend on my ear. So I would sit down and play. I would totally just try to depend on my ear, and he would give me these exercises, and instead of just knowing what it was, I would try to hear it all, versus knowing. What is your thought on developing the ear, and still, even with the scales, being able to hear that stuff? What is your thought on, do you just learn it first and build the ear, or just going to build the ear and use it second, or do it together? Do you think that there's a better way to make sure that you're developing your ear for scales? Like we mentioned, being able to hear a singer sing and know what notes they're playing because you know what key you're in, and people want to get to that place. But what do you think the best way to build those things in together? I need to build my ear. I need to build my facility so that I can play it, and I need to. I think that those are the two. What do you think the best way to get both of those is?
Well, what I try to do, and I think I'm still going to possibly still do this for my student group, maybe the 31 day challenge group. I'm going to do a video on practice, the importance of practice, because I think sometimes we don't understand. Like for me, let me tell you what I do, and then hopefully this will make sense to you. What I do is I have my scale portion, and I go through that. My chromatic scale and everything like that, right? That's one part of my practice regimen. Then I have my my chords with melody, and I go through that. And that's another part of my regimen. And then maybe learning a song or a new song or attempting to do something I know. That's another part of my regimen. So you break it up. And so break up the listening. Break up the other aspects of getting your facility together. And so you say, I'm going to give 20 minutes to this and then 20 minutes to that. Or I'm going to give, if I got an hour, I'm going to give 40 minutes to this and 20 minutes to this. Or make it even, half an hour and half an hour. So both of those things can be accomplished throughout your day or throughout your week